Sweet. Well, I can go live then. Awesome. So welcome to round 4 of New Zealand Schools Debating Championships. I'm Cara, I'm your chair today. I believe the motion is that this House regrets TikTok mental health awareness content, for example, like signs of ADHD and my experience with depression. So we have Hawke's Bay on the Affirming team and Auckland White on the Negating team. So we've already done the introduction. I believe that we can be all good to start. So I welcome up the first speaker of the Affirming team.
Mental illness is not an untapped market for the Negating team to try and extract profit from by exploiting vulnerable actors. Hawke's Bay tells you that TikTok mental health corrupts the legitimacy of mental health diagnosis and preys off people's desire to improve. 3 points on this today. Firstly, on accuracy and diagnosis. Secondly, how it exploits vulnerable audiences. And thirdly, Isabella will provide a split on how this politicizes mental health. On to my first point about accuracy and diagnosis. Real mental health problems need to be addressed, and TikTok has prevented this from happening. Firstly, we see self-diagnoses becoming more common. The videos on TikTok, such as the 5 reasons, which have general traits that everyone connects to. These, because they're more general because they're more applicable to a wider audience, for good and for bad. This looks like people wanting to get their video out to more people, so making it more accessible to more people. Because this is an app that everyone spends hours on, when people have issues on their life, open up TikTok and immediately see, oh, I felt distracted today. If I'm distracted, I have ADHD. People believe they've cracked the code to their issues when they're looking at TikTok. On our side of the house, we prevent this because people's main sources of information isn't from a 30-second video that only shows a very small scope. The second reason for how we get more accuracy is because of the glamorization that has occurred on TikTok. TikTok have values that appeals to young people. So we've got things like hashtags, we've got dances, we've got filters, we've got trends and songs, essentially trying to increase engagement because TikTok works with an algorithm. It needs this engagement for people's videos to get sent to the top. When fun videos are the backdrop, it's glamorizing ideals that are actually hugely dangerous for actually dealing with people with mental health issues. This means on TikTok, it becomes a trend and society follows the trend and people change to be involved, feeling like they are to be involved with mental health issues. On our side, we don't get flashy gimmicks to capture viewers for a few seconds. Other social media platforms and other mechanisms get more text-based and allow people for substantive content to be discussed. We see this on Facebook. It doesn't have a comment cap of 28 words like it does on TikTok. There's more opportunity for discussion, and we agree that discussion is important. So on to my second, I'll actually take a POI.
Do you not think that if TikTok doesn't have this, why would Facebook have this?
TikTok has a 28-word limit on their comment. I've just told you that Facebook has a much wider range. Continuing on the point of accuracy and diagnosis, people are less inclined to seek help with TikTok. When people go on TikTok and are told that they have depression because here are the 3 signs we show you, these people accept it to be the truth. Now, why do they do that? It's because it's coming from content creators they relate to. It's because they have distrust in the healthcare systems that already exist, which these ideas are perpetrated on social media. What we see with this is people not seeking real doctors' advice. It leads to people who need help not actually going and not getting the medication and the support that they actually require. It also looks like people who potentially don't have these issues feeling like they do and filling up healthcare, which I'll talk more about. What we get is people who are feeling down or genuinely struggling now do what they should be doing what they did before TikTok, which looks like going to their GP or researching on a truly referenced mental health sites. We see this is very important. Fourthly, we get more focus on niche mental health. On TikTok, you either have depression or ADHD. It's these two mental health issues that are perpetrated the most because they're most likely to engage with more audience because you're either fidget or you be sad and you have this mental health issue. What this does is it means niche mental health issues go unaddressed and people who have like schizophrenia, BPD are pushed into these different molds. These issues don't get represented because they are too graphic and literally violate community guidelines. This means that we're not getting the true engagement and the true awareness of the mental health problems that we need if any benefits were to occur, because we're just pushing it into a different mold that does not support people actually dealing with mental health issues. What we get after this point is we get over-flooded healthcare systems. People get convinced that they need a diagnosis that could be probably solved on a smaller level. And we see people going to therapists or filling up helplines when people who need it get put on hold for 45 minutes. We see this as really negative as TikTok perpetrates the idea that fidgeting in class means you need to seek help immediately, and people who genuinely need help aren't being heard when they need to be. Also, we see that doctors become more inclined to reject diagnosis, and doctors delegitimize mental health when people are bringing the idea, oh, where did you think this came from? Oh, I saw a video on TikTok. It's perpetrating the ideas that mental health isn't real in our society instead of taking these issues seriously when they need to be. Also, because the bad sides aren't published as well, like with certain like eating disorders, the effects that it can have on your body and the toll, and we only see, oh, you become really skinny, it delegitimizes this mental health more and it becomes an ideal that people want to fit to. What we get if we hadn't had this TikTok glamorization, if this TikTok trend hadn't occurred, we'd have productive discussion that helps people with these illnesses because they're not trying to capture people's attention, and we get more discussion and the harms don't come when we make this a trend. Second point on exploitation. We care about vulnerable people in our society. Who are the people that are using TikTok? We've already told you it's more likely to be youth because you just connect to TikTok. It's what people are doing, right? TikTok is new and it's gravitating towards these young, malleable kids who are susceptible to creating new ideas. And when we see that their main exposure to mental health is on TikTok, we can see it's discussed in schools, but when it's discussed in school's health class and they go home and watch TikTok for 4 hours and get shown potentially millions of examples of what mental health could look like, we see this as the main exposure they get to it. This means instead of on our side, when young people are learning in schools and through other avenues, they get the symptoms, they get warning signs, they get proper support networks to go to, and not just you have this mental illness. Or secondly, on misinformation. TikTok is the home of misinformation because it's short form, because people don't need to explain or reference their ideas where they're coming from. Because mental health is normalized, it's becoming an untapped market for people to go into. What this leads to is people with fake qualifications claiming to be a doctor coming out and feeding you lies to get maximum engagement, claiming that they have the qualifications that they don't, or people withholding key details that I've already said, maybe violate community guidelines or literally just purposefully creating this misinformation. If we didn't see this on TikTok, we would see people with real experience being the ones to educate vulnerable people. Thirdly, we're exploiting people at their most vulnerable. We see on TikTok, mums love to film videos of their kids having panic attacks and exploiting them to engage with this, and hashtag crybaby, stuff like this. We see it all the time. What this means, it's triggering for others, and it further creates our image that mental health looks a certain way. We get mental health being treated as something that should be on the algorithms, exploiting young people, and creates a community that is actually more negative. We get less of this on our side because we get it from professionals, and we get it from people that are created to inform, not just to get good content. We regret this side with its back.
Also, I think the speaker for a speech. I'm just going to see if I can pull the screen. Oh, yeah, sorry, and then I'll welcome up the first speaker of the Negating team to open things.
What people did before awareness of mental health was raised on platforms like TikTok was not to go to their GP and just seek treatment. What they did was languish and suffer without an understanding or awareness about mental health that exists today. They didn't know they were suffering. They didn't know there was something wrong with them. They thought they were just broken people. That is the real counterfactual. Before we go into my points, what is the counterfactual then? We've heard from Affirmative some vague assertions about how it's having productive discussions that don't try to capture people's attention, or simply posts on Facebook that aren't limit capped by a certain number of comments. Okay, the first thing to note here is the fact that it captures people's attention is probably a good thing about TikTok. I'll go into that later. But what we think the realistic counterfactual is a world with far less mental health awareness. We see this because the content that is on TikTok is often by people sharing their own experiences to others, and absent this incentive, they probably won't do so on other social media sites like Facebook either. There's no reason why they'll do that, especially given they most likely connect with TikTok the most. That's the platform they're most likely to use. What that means is, absent TikTok, there is little discussion of these experiences by real people online that is harmful. 3 points for the house. First, on how this is a uniquely powerful means for awareness. Second, how this awareness has improved the quality of lives of many. Finally, finally, how it normalizes these experiences. Sorry about that. Okay. First in on how this is a uniquely accessible means, a powerful means for awareness. Contextually, what does this awareness on TikTok predominantly look like? It looks like 3 things. The first is it's posted by people going through or have gone through the experience themselves. This looks like people who have gone through depression or ADHD talking about their experiences and diagnosis and treatment. The second is often highly personal anecdotes of their experiences, often sharing what they went through to get to the point in their lives of having that diagnosis. Finally, it's these videos describing their experiences and potential signs that could indicate these conditions that warrant further exploration. It looks like creators like Jazz Thornton in New Zealand, who went through depression herself and then describes the way she felt during this process to others online. What this doesn't look like is what we're given by this narrative by Affirmative about parents posting their children with hashtag crybaby. We don't even know where they got this assertion from. This is not the vast majority of the content. What the vast majority of the content is like given, is what I went through with depression, what signs of ADHD might look like that these creators have themselves faced. How is this a uniquely powerful means of awareness? 2 things. First, it's extremely accessible. Noting what we get from proposition about how it is accessible to young people particularly, it means that you might stumble across this content that you might otherwise not have, and seeing conditions and possible signs that you might have otherwise not realized. Second, it is more empathetic. You are more likely to relate to an experience or feel sympathy at the point it's a personal recollection of someone else's experience as opposed to a generic health campaign. This is where proposition brings material on how all this content is exaggerated and exploitative, telling us about how it's likely to be shallow, attention-seeking, or just fundamentally wrong. Why has this predominantly not been the case? 4 reasons. First is simply the existence of fact-checkers on TikTok increasingly. At the point mental health is discussed, often a bubble pops up telling you that there are fact-checkers available. Second, there are intrinsic sources of other creators checking this, right? This looks like psychiatrists who are on TikTok dutifully duetting videos talking about which are more accurate, which are less accurate, or other creators who have gone through this doing the same. Third is a broader understanding now of what is actually accurate. Looks like comment sections being flooded with wrong if it is genuinely wrong. It looks like these things being called out for being false. Fourth, it's literally the fact that more accurate depictions will receive more likes and followers, right? At the point you're accurately depicting it, other people who have gone through that are more likely to like your post, more likely to interact with it. That's more likely to be pushed in the algorithm. It means that in the majority of cases, it is good awareness that is broadly pushed to the forefront of the narrative on TikTok, but also that is uniquely powerful because you may not know that you need help. For instance, if you always have trouble with school and a creator with ADHD talks about similar experiences, for instance, getting distracted all the time, not being able to hold your focus, you may start to realize maybe these symptoms do overlap slightly with mine, maybe I should explore further help. The impact of all of this is that TikTok has broadly been a means to improve broader awareness that could not have been created in proposition world. Because their counterfactual that they don't engage with is a world that simply has less of this content in the first instance, less mental health awareness. That is what they never address. Okay, second on how this awareness has helped to improve quality of life. Contextually, the awareness of knowing things that, for instance, things like ADHD could be affecting school performance, or anxiety can be a symptom of depression, it's important to prompting further action. What is that? 2 things. First is just recognizing that it might not just be how it is.
Yeah.
Notably, you may not realize how conditions can manifest. You may not realize that ADHD may be causing your bad school performance. You may not realize that depression might be what is causing you to feel so sad all the time, so empty all the time. Second, it prompts further treatment and action. Now, this is when we get the material about how people just open TikTok and then suddenly decide they have ADHD. Look, I think that people are not going to just open the app, see a generic post about how being distracted is a symptom of ADHD, and then decide that they have ADHD.
Sure.
We think that's a categorically ridiculous characterization of how reasonable people on this app act. What we think is more realistic is that if you see a post and you think that you have some of these symptoms, or that you have felt weird in the past, you have felt empty in the past, that you're more likely to dig deeper and explore treatment. Note that this is a unique way that this initial awareness that you gain from TikTok, which we admit is not perfectly accurate all the time, leads to you exploring a greater degree of change. It seems like Affirmative realizes this when they engage with this by saying, oh, we don't want too many people getting treatment because that might overflow the system. Okay. People who do not feel bad, people who feel fine in their daily lives are not going to go through the hurdles of seeking therapy. And if people who do feel bad go through the hurdles of seeking therapy, that is obviously a good thing. Just because the system is overworked at the moment doesn't mean we should stop them from seeking treatment so that people who do manage to pass this barrier can get better treatment. Everyone deserves treatment.
Sure.
That is how we get this awareness. It looks like realizing that feeling tired all the time might be a symptom of depression, and that might lead you to seek this broader treatment, might make you realize that this is not normal. It's just not a normal part of modern life. That is the type of quality of life improvement that we're talking about. I'll take that point now.
Who's the target audience for mental health awareness?
Young people, that's fine. And predominantly, I will note here, it is literally all young people, but if you don't engage with this content, if you don't think it's relevant to you, you just swipe past it, right? I don't see the point of that point. Okay, finally then, how this normalizes the diverse difference in experiences that people with mental health issues experience. Contextually, not everyone necessarily experiences the manifestation of mental illness the same way. This is why health campaigns have things like some people with depression may withdraw or self-destruct, some may sleep or party all the time, to the point of it being difficult for people to realize what this condition might look like. That is what you get, comparatively, in a world where people are able to freely talk about their experiences on TikTok in the way they have. That is how you get this difference in representation of what these conditions can look like. Seeing these experiences, for instance, of a person who's depressed but also extremely social, or a person who's very successful but also has ADHD, leads you not only to, one, increase the understanding that this disease is not a monolith for newcomers who may have it, but two, also the mental well-being of the mental well-being of the groups that do have these conditions. It means that if you are a depressed person who is very social, who is conventionally attractive, who has a partner and a lot of friends, that you are recognized for that as being a legitimate experience. You don't have society telling you that you shouldn't be depressed. You have the ability to see others experiencing the same thing. You have the ability to share these experiences online. I think fundamentally at the end of all of this, what a proposition does is give us a problem that they think has existed, which is mass people thinking they have mental health conditions en masse. That's not realistic. What they need to contend with is their counterfactual is a world where people with mental health illnesses don't receive this awareness, don't seek further treatment. No one is just deciding they have ADHD. They're seeing that they might have signs of it and getting treatment that is obviously positive. Proud to oppose.
Awesome, I thank the speaker for his speech, and now I'll welcome up the second speaker of the Affirming team to continue our team's case.
What has the Negating team told you so far? They have told you that we will be returning to a 19th century archaic world where mental health awareness just does not exist. This is not true, and I will be explaining to you why in my speech. A couple of questions in my rebuttal. Firstly, I'll be talking about what world we will actually be returning to, or what would exist without the TikToks. Secondly, I'll be talking about what is good awareness and how do we get that. Thirdly, about do people actually just believe TikToks? And lastly, on the accuracy of this awareness that we will be getting. That we have been getting on this side negating, before I move on to my point about the politicization of mental health that we get with TikTok awareness videos. To start off with, on what we would be returning to. So basically, the negating team briefly said that we will be returning to a world with basically no knowledge of mental health whatsoever if we didn't have these TikToks at all. Why isn't this true? Well, first we think that like naturally doctors and like health lines just progress. We progress as a society. It becomes just normalized in general, just that we're going to be able to we're going to be able to address these problems. This looks like doctors learning more, like more research happening in general. This looks like the research happens, and then like this is how doctors become more informed. It looks like it becoming more normalized for people to go into lines of work such as therapy, which just means that without TikTok, it doesn't mean that we would not have any awareness whatsoever. So ultimately, at the end of this point, you can see that like our world isn't going to be archaic if we didn't have TikTok awareness videos. Then secondly, on like the good awareness in general. So what did we hear from negating? Firstly we heard about how like it is more educational and like better awareness when you are like because these people who are on TikTok have been through the issue or faced it themselves, or they're knowledgeable. Why isn't this true? Well, firstly, we think that not necessarily everybody on TikTok is actually isn't knowledgeable about the issue. Why is this? Well, it's because like there is the huge engagement factor, the huge money factor, the influencer status that we see that people will do anything to get. This means that they can bring in heaps of money to be able to support their families. People want this, so they go and they seek out this, even if it means like teaching on like mental health issues when you actually have zero background on that yourself. Secondly, we also see that like there's like no referencing whatsoever. So we can't even tell if these people do actually know about the issues themselves. People could, for all well, could like actually have experiences or could like be very well read on the issue, but we wouldn't know because they don't reference on TikTok. There's not a culture of putting all of the websites and theses you've read in the captions. No one does that, and nobody would read it anyway. This is why it is so harmful when we like have this good awareness, or whatever the negating team wants to try and claim, going through. Then also they went on to say that like there are other like methods that we have in order to make sure that like the awareness is good. They basically like listed like fact checkers and stuff on TikTok and seem to characterize and seem to think that these things actually work. Why don't they? Well, firstly, we tell you that like these companies aren't really incentivized to like go through heaps of fact checking. Instead, they like want to spend their money where like it's actually going to help them. That's engagement. They get engagement with these views proliferating or not. So they're actually wanting to spend money on like increasing advertisement. They're wanting to spend money on like getting more influencers on board, not on trying to shut some down. So it just doesn't work. And we've seen that historically like on TikTok. And so obviously at the end of this point, you can just basically see that there isn't any fact checking and it's just not reliable, good awareness happening. And then secondly, they told us that it's a great platform for awareness because it's empathetic, there's emotions, and you get this personal experience. This is so harmful. Why is this? Well, firstly, because people just get caught up in the movement of it. They get angry, they get emotive. Which is what they explain on their side of the house. We don't want emotive, trendy ways of like addressing mental health. We want on side affirming like the doctors, the mental health lines. We want like these issues being actually taken seriously, which is why we so strongly reject the TikTok awareness videos. And then on like to the point of like, do people just believe TikTok? And we believe that they do. So then again, this is because like it's seen as a community. So people like they're a part of a community, they're getting involved, it's like everyone together, so they just get believe everything that's seen. If you're in a community, then you're going to trust the people that you're in a community with, which may be a mental health community online on TikTok. This is really harmful because when you are like just in this community, just believing everything everyone says, you're very susceptible for the disinformation that we have outlined very clearly at Ella at first. And then secondly, we tell you that like the people who are on TikTok searching for like mental health awareness answers, because it's an easy way to go and do this, as Ella explained, these people are vulnerable. If they're like facing potential mental health illnesses and they're like searching for a solution, they're really susceptible to just believe anything they say. They're searching for an answer and they think they're going to get it on TikTok. So they're again highly susceptible to the disinformation. What does this mean? This means that we like don't get like accurate diagnosis. It means we get like harmful self-diagnoses. It means that like people don't actually know what to do once they've like been diagnosed on TikTok, and they just have no way of actually dealing with it because they don't have the health professional. They're just going to TikTok, sticking with their community and believing everything they see. And then lastly, on accuracy. So what did we hear from them? Well, we believe that it isn't very accurate on TikTok. Firstly, about like the care and the treatment. So like surely like if you like get a diagnosis, you're wanting to be able to seek treatment afterwards. We think that's highly unlikely to happen, and you're not going to get accurate treatment because again, if you've been diagnosed through like the 5 reasons why, you're going to think that listening to like 5 reasons how will fix your depression too. And then secondly, we tell you that like now doctors just don't trust these people. They're not able to get accurate information. Due to this proliferation of TikTok awareness, the doctors just don't trust anyone who comes in the door anymore with mental health. If we hadn't had TikToks, then the doctors would have been able to learn about it in like a much better environment. They would have been able to know like what mental health is without all of like the like presumed self-diagnoses or like the all of this that comes along with when we have TikTok proliferating. Moving on to my point, but before I do that, I'll take a POI.
As in, why would anyone diagnose themselves and not then seek a treatment?
We said that they will seek a treatment, but they're more likely to seek this treatment through TikTok, through the, as I explained, 5 reasons how this is going to fix you, because they think that it's worked and they got a self-diagnosis through there. So why are they going to go now suddenly turn to a doctor if they've been sticking with TikTok all along? Moving on to my point about the politicization of mental health that is occurring through TikTok. So for some context, I think that everyone needs to know and care about mental health in order to get maximum benefits, but this doesn't happen with the politicization. First reason why, generational differences. Young people are on TikTok. We've explained this at Ella. I mean, it's a trend. It's like current. It's a new app. So the young people are on it. Old people haven't heard about it. This creates a divide where the older people who, like, as the negating team said, like who didn't tend to know much about mental health previously, they think it's just a Gen Z issue. They don't need to know about it. They're just going to carry on with their normal values. If we hadn't had TikTok, we could have gotten everyone on board and on the same page. Secondly, we tell you that like TikTok just fulfills like stereotypes that conservatives believe about like people with mental health issues. This looks like people like saying that like people with ADHD just can't concentrate or they need to work harder, or people with depression are just like too self-centered and they just need to get happier. And we think this is really harmful and is more likely to happen with TikTok, as I just explained. And thirdly, we tell you that like TikTok is seen as a place for the left. The right uses apps like Truth Social, so they don't trust that all this information on the left that they are seeing. Ultimately, on-site affirming, we believe in accurate and awareness that is going to actually help these people with mental health issues.
Also, I think the student prayer speech, and now I'll welcome up the second speaker for the voting team to continue to space.
Normalization is the singular most important part of any kind of mental health awareness movement. Normalization is what makes people stop seeing people with mental health issues as weird, as bad, as not deserving of help, as not deserving of support. The only way that we can ever possibly, the way that we have been fighting this, these attitudes is to show people what these experiences are like and to normalize them. This has so many really positive impacts on these people, on their lives directly. 2 things to talk about today. First, on what this content is likely to look like, and second, on what the counterfactual is likely to look like. Okay. First, on what this content is likely to look like. First, I just want to note that information is always going to be more accurate when there is more of it. This is where the idea of statistics comes from, right? You have a bunch of different cases, you have a bunch of different examples, you start to see a trend, you start to see, oh, this is a symptom of ADHD that all of these posts seems to have, and I have that too. So maybe, I might have ADHD or something like that. The more examples that you see, the more the ones that are wrong will appear to be anomalous. The more the ones that that are bad, that are by people that don't seem to have any kind of reliable backing up or don't seem to have any kind of consistency in the symptoms that they talk about are likely to be disregarded. It's really important to note that it's incredibly hard to prove that when you have this hugely increased amount of information and research, people will not be able to find the right research. Especially because they can end up Googling, finding reliable, sources, doctors, things like that, like books on the subject. Okay. Taking on what kind of mental health issues we're likely to see. We saw at first that it's likely to be something super, it's likely to be ADHD or depression, and absolutely nothing in between. Because, and the main reason for this is that, you can't really show super graphic things on TikTok, and these are the things people tend to talk about. Firstly, mental health is more than just graphic breakdowns. Obviously, just because these things have some kind of graphic, terrible consequences sometimes, doesn't mean people can't talk about them at all. But secondly, two things. First, when it's bigger, there simply is going to be more conversation about all of these different mental health illnesses. If you only have less videos on TikTok because it's not a trend, maybe it will only be on ADHD and depression. But if you have 20 times the amount, then it's more likely to be on more interesting things because people try and find niches, right? When people try and find their unique little thing to talk about, to tell people's experiences about, people try and communicate their own experiences. We also heard that these mental health issues are likely to be incredibly simplistic. First, this is not inherently harmful of itself, and we tell you that the more variety you have in the way that these, that because you have so much variety, a bunch of different simplistic expressions of people's experiences actually combine to show a complex experience, right? Because even if you're showing one thing that you experience, one anecdote from your day, you add all those together and you create an impression of the kind of experiences that these people go through. But secondly, even if it starts with this eye-catching, fun TikToks, eye-catching 30-second short videos, it's likely that people actually move on to find more complex things. We told you people are likely to go Google, but also just they're likely to go and click on this creator's account to follow them. And TikTok has 10-minute videos. There is plenty of time to include huge amounts of complexity when you're already invested in someone's experiences from these things. We also heard that people are unlikely to post to post accurate info because they're purely motivated by money. They just want money. They just want attention. First of all, TikTok does not give you that much money. TikTok mainly people earn money from TikTok from companies paying them things like sponsorships. That's the hugest source of income on TikTok, and the only one that gives you more than literally $1 a year. And so as these products and stuff are less likely to be things with this thing, this isn't going to happen. But there's also this incredible, it's also not necessarily a very good way to get views. It's not super reliable. We told you if it's super inaccurate, people might not relate to it, stuff like that. But also, we keep a hugely strong motivation for people to post these mental health videos. It's actually the incredible empathy that people are likely to feel for those that go through similar experiences to them. We told you mental health is really hard. It's hard being different to absolutely everyone else. It's hard not understanding your experiences, feeling like you're different and weird, and literally just struggling with things in your everyday life. You do not want other people to go through these things, and so you try and share as much information as you possibly can. You try and share accurate information, and the people that care about other people are always going to be more dedicated because they will always live with this thing. They will always care about these other people. Well, the people that are super, super motivated by money, the moment they don't get that huge income, they're likely to just go and find another source of income, another source of quick cash that can, maybe like advertising makeup or something like that, something that's likely to be, have a lot more of an income. We also heard that it's likely to be depicted, in this silly kind of way. We tell you that the thing is that this is how mental health is depicted under the status quo. In the counterfactual, it's likely to be depicted, before this normalization, it was depicted as weird and silly because humans don't like things that are different to them. And so, we got this example of parents and child church and stuff like that. And we tell you that actually what's more likely is that it's going to be hashtag wow, this person's really weird, rather than hashtag mental health awareness. All of the connotations are likely to be significantly more harmful because if this content is entertaining, then it's likely going to show up. Either way, we also heard that people are super incentivized to believe absolutely everything they say. However, when this article was printed, it ended in, and then they end up confused because they see all these things of these different ideas and they believe them all. They want to believe them all. If it leaves you confused, you're likely to go and talk to someone. And also, these just don't work. If it's bad advice and it's not helping you, then obviously you're going to go and try and find something that actually does help you. Okay. We also heard that when people go to mental health professionals, this isn't good because they're sick of people from TikTok and they turn them away. First of all, these people actually care about people. That's why they went into the job. Secondly, they want money. They want to go and have interviews with people because they have multiple direct incentives in their lives to do this. Okay, so what does this lead to? This leads to much more broader, more reasonable views of these people. People understand them more. They understand themselves more, and they don't have the self-hatred that comes with seeing themselves as strange. They treat other people. People treat other people better, and people treat themselves better. And so we just have a hugely higher quality of life. We'll take a PI now.
How do influencers decide to make videos?
Influencers, they post about something they like, or they post to try and get money. It doesn't really matter, because the point is that mental health awareness has some much stronger incentives, and I've already given you analysis as to why these are likely to be more common. Okay, what's the counterfactual? Okay, we've heard that in the absence of this, things like mental health awareness are likely to be classes taught in things like classes in schools. We tell you that the reason mental health awareness is taught in classes in schools right now is because kids are pushing for it, because kids know that it's real, because teenagers that grew up with TikTok are starting to realize, oh wait, this mental health thing is kind of important. It really, has an impact on people's lives. And so they say, actually, we need to teach this in school. They say in feedback forms, they say at assemblies, we need to learn about this. This is important. But when you do not have this narrative, when you do not have this normalization that I have talked about, these things are still seen as weird and strange, because people simply do not have the exposure. And so the counterfactual is that when you don't have this normalization, it's actually, like you said, you don't have this normalization. It's not shown. It's not shown in these parts of society that that the other side wants to pretend that they are. We've heard it's going to be because of things like progress as a society, research, general progression. Okay, first of all, I've already told you normalization works on a large scale. A few doctors, not a large scale. Second, scientists knew for hundreds of years that the sun surrounded the earth or whatever before anyone actually believed it. People don't generally believe doctors and scientists for ages because people are really stuck in their opinions. But over a while, they convince more and more people. The more and more people they convince, the more, the more people are convinced, and then that leads to this kind of normalization. Okay. Also, there's this huge amount of stigma, and this relies on these people being taken seriously. They are simply not taken seriously. The doctors simply do not take them seriously because they are seen as weird and strange, and this permeates every part of society, including doctors, including schools, including medical schools. We desperately need this normalization so that we can change that.
The speaker for a speech now. I'll welcome up the third speaker of the Affirming team.
Sorry.
The negation team have painted a very uncharitable characterization of what our counterfactual looks like. We have never claimed that we are going to have no awareness at all, that normalization is totally bad. We have given you the distinct reasons as to why having it on a short-form platform like TikTok is going to make it particularly bad for young people and vulnerable people, so they can have their vulnerabilities exploited. On our side of the house, our path to victory in today's debate is to show you the unique intrinsic reasons as to why TikTok is not the right platform for this content to be available. We have given you plenty of mechanisms as to how other social media platforms differ. 3 points of clash in today's debate. Firstly, what does awareness look like on these platforms? Secondly, are people going to be incorrectly diagnosing? And thirdly, the incentives of people who post this content, right? But firstly, an explanation of what our counterfactual actually is. Yes, we do regret TikTok mental health. We regret the activists on it, but we believe we still this is not the stem of mental health issues. A lot of their material is contingent if you believe that mental health awareness started on TikTok and is somehow the only mechanism as a reason why it became popular. Why is this not the case? We believe we have seen in the past maybe 20 years and ramping up exponentially the talk of mental health for other reasons. Firstly, we see like an influx of globalization and seeing global news. This has perpetuated mental health issues right into the cultural zeitgeist because a lot of people have more exposure to these things through social media, not exactly TikTok health awareness. This is not, and we believe we've been discussing these for 20 odd years. This is not on our side of the house. This is how mental health actually gets spread. It actually gets talked about in real life communities that are going to have a better grasp on it because more people are going to have these mental health issues because they are bombarded with like more bad news and other reasons like that. That is why we see mental health awareness. It's also been accelerated by things like the pandemic, where we have seen like people isolated and how that has affected their mental health, and a lot of other bad global circumstances which has perpetuated mental health, right? On our side of the house, we still get awareness to these things because there's social media platforms like YouTube and Facebook, and it would provide you substantial mechanisms like reasons as to why these are different, such as they're not short form, they're more text based, and they're able to have like places to like put where you cite your sources, especially on websites like WebMD. So first, onto my first point of clash about what does awareness actually look like. On their side of the house, they want us to try and say that, oh no, it's only people who like have the disorder and things like that, right? Look, firstly, we don't believe that it's like simply right to even if we do buy this material, we believe that like not every person with a mental health with a mental illness should be an advocate, that because they specify a very niche subsection of what that mental illness looks like. A mental illness exists on a spectrum, on a scale. Just because you have one person who has a specific type of depression, it does not become a representative of all those people. However, through TikTok activism, and the fact that it is a 6-minute video, they do not have the time to cram that nuance into that video. Therefore, they're just going to say what they have, which means, which is really harmful, especially to those with a mental illness, because they're like, I actually don't feel those specific symptoms. Maybe I don't have this mental illness. It actually does go both ways, because when you have specific illnesses, you are showing the complete spectrum, and that's really harmful, right? But they were like, oh no, that doesn't really matter, because like people who actually have the mental illness will go out and like seek that help anyway. We gave you at Ella why that simply will not happen, right? Because the majority of young people on this ad maybe like don't want to believe that they have a mental illness, right? Because mental illness obviously comes with a whole lot of stigma. It comes with a lot of yes, we like to think we're making strides in normalization, but it is still like seen as like a barrier that you need to face. It comes with a whole lot of issues, like you feel like you have to get medicated. It's a whole lot, especially a financial strain on a lot of families. Therefore, that hinders people from getting treatment. When they turn to when TikTok's telling them they need treatment for something they might not, it becomes really harmful there. Right. What does mental health awareness also look like? Right. They want to try and claim under this that people who like feel fine under this. Okay, now I'm going to move on to my second point of class. But still, if we do that, yes, I'll take a POI.
If the content is long, complex, and not engaging on something like Facebook, how can it ever reach the level of exposure needed for normalization?
We believe I just gave you really good reasons in my intro as to why exposure happens under our side of the house without needing the use of flashy gimmicks, right? I'm going to make a point of clash about are people going to be like self-diagnosing and misaligning themselves, right? They wanted to try and say here that people people don't have incentives to people are going to, people who feel fine aren't going to go seek help, right? But again, the conflation here is really important. Everyone feels sad, everyone feels anxious, and everyone feels extreme sets of emotions, things like bad body image days, etc. Where does the harm come in? The conflation of these ideas due to the TikTok algorithm and creators having an incentive to make this as generalized as possible. We agree. Sure, there might be good actors, but those good actors are still going to want to make general points in order to get their content to as many people as possible and the largest demographic. What does this end up doing, right? A lot of people who especially teenagers who go through like very rapid mood swings are going to feel like they have potentially a mental illness, because again they are craving that solution. They are craving that one answer, that one very specific answer. Yes, I have depression. Yes, I have anxiety. When it actually could be a host of external factors that could be infinitely more complicated than just slapping one label on it to make sure to try and explain things, right? What we see here is these people then going to go seek a diagnosis, and the incredible harms that come with that, like overfloating the health system, which is incredibly harmful, because they want to try and say, oh no, doctors want money and doctors want to see people, so therefore they'll take in everyone. Yes, they might take in everyone, but those people who actually have a mental health issue are now sitting behind the queue for people who might not have it. Their waiting time gets increased, and that waiting time with people with actual mental health issues is so crucial. That is when we get people doing incredibly harmful things to themselves, doing harmful coping mechanisms that are potentially lethal. They need to be careful with on this side of the debate, those people clogging up that system, the people who are incredibly vulnerable and the stakeholders we must focus on in this debate. Lastly, are these actors good or bad, right? They wanted to try to say, no, everyone's just trying to get normalization, and normalization is really good even from good or bad actors, right? Why is normalization in the context of bad actors really bad? We have these bad actors wanting to perpetrate maybe stereotypes and things, stereotypes about certain communities in order to maybe stoke debate in the comments section, right? As we gave you, Isabella, the politicization of mental health issues, a critically unengaged with point where we have people from the right thinking these social issues aren't important and people from the left trying to defend that. We get these bad actors who want this discussion going on in the comment section to boost their video up to the top of the For You page so they can gain more money. And we believe that, and then they want to try to come back actually, no, they don't get that much money because it's sponsorship based. Look, we believe companies are actually going to want to sponsor a lot of this content to make them be seen as allies and be seen as advocacy, just as a point of tokenism. They want to be seen as supporting these issues because they are in the cultural zeitgeist and incredibly relevant today. What have we given you at the end of today's debate? We have given you structural reasons as to why the TikTok algorithm and the way it is structurally based is incredibly harmful for mental health issues. Who is the team that actually gives fundamental help to the people who need it? It's Team Hawke's Bay. Vote Neg.
Awesome, I think the speaker for his speech now. We'll welcome up the third speaker of the Negating team.
For the most vulnerable people in society, those actively suffering with mental illness, to ensure that we actually support them, we increase awareness, and we increase societal empathy, vote for Affirming. Okay, 4 things to do in this speech today. First on, I swear, did I say the wrong? First on, awareness. Second of all, what this actually looks like. And second of all, why it was so necessary. Second of all, on misinformation. Third of all, on treatment. And fourth of all, just miscellaneously on politicization. Okay, first of all, what does this awareness actually look like? They characterize this content just to be used for gain. So it's exploitative. Realistically, we think that most people on TikTok have been actually doing this and raising awareness because they were once someone that has struggled with mental illness. They have that intrinsic desire to actually help people because they have faced that too. We also think if they really did want to get it just for that clout, we think it's a lot easier for these people just to do it like a silly TikTok dance and get that fame through that way. We think realistically, what we have seen historically on things like TikTok is people like Jazzy Thornton who have actually had that intrinsic desire or that intrinsic motivation to do that. Then they told us that they prefer other social medias instead, like Facebook, because it has more text and discussion is important. For 3 things. First of all, this concedes that discussion online is good. Second of all, this also says we also get text too, because at the point you post a TikTok, you have a bit of text, but also frequently you link other things. And third of all, where would these creators, how would these creators in the counterfactual suddenly go to Facebook? They haven't, and they won't. We think that TikTok is unique to actually hear the voices of the youth. Then they randomly told us that we'd actually hear about mental health via globalization and other medias. First of all, Again, concedes it's good. Second of all, like, it's still short form media. Third of all, like, we think most of this via TikTok is uniquely beneficial for the youth because youth don't often engage with the news. We think this is just like, this kind of falls out of the debate. If it were to happen, if it was the counterfactual, it probably already would have happened. And finally, on the specificity of what this content looks like, we think that we actually get on our house more nuance to range, like, of the range of creators. We think because we give a platform to many people, whether you are popular, whether you are unpopular, we think if you have to rely on the news, you only get mainstream, monolithic views of what mental health looks like, only depression and anxiety. At least on our side of the house, we told you at Chris, we told you down the line that you get diverse representations of real people going through things. Okay, now why was and is this so very critical regarding, like, awareness? We think that you get these tangible impacts that went largely unaddressed. First of all, you get more awareness. So people that are currently suffering don't suffer in silence. They actually go and try to get a diagnosis, or they go in Google and they try to get a diagnosis. Second of all, we think it's easier for these people to be in society because people are more knowledgeable, more accepting. At the point there's someone with OCD and they start doing their compulsions, if you've never seen this before, you've never seen it on TikTok as a youth because you don't really watch the news, you're more likely to backlash against them and be like, oh my god, what the heck are you doing? We think we get more empathy, more better treatment throughout society. We think this is extremely crucial. We told you this stuff down the line of these tangible impacts went largely unaddressed. And they told us that actually, what TikTok is it says if you can't focus, you have ADHD. Two things. First of all, we think usually it's suggestions. It's like if you have these variety of symptoms, you might have XYZ. We also think, second of all, people don't stop at one TikTok. We think if you genuinely think you have a concern with something, you're likely to see this TikTok, get awareness, be like, oh my goodness, I might have something, and guess what? Google it or go to someone else. We think this awareness is important because they try to tell us that doctors won't listen to you. We think we actually get people to the doctor's doors in the first place at the point they have some form of awareness. Okay. Then they told us, yeah, they didn't deal with the fact that we still get all the social awareness, all this normalization, all this reducing of stigma, and like Google exists. We also think most people know, like, they don't stop at this one TikTok. We think it's good for these people to know. We think that people not realizing they have things like ADHD because they've never even heard of it, but they struggle. These are manifest harms in society. We think it's good to know. We think it's extremely valuable and beneficial to the most vulnerable. Okay, then we had this push from them regarding awareness that it's bad because it only focuses on depression and anxiety. Four things. First of all, we think it concedes again that awareness is good because, like, why are they so concerned that you only get two? We think, yeah, it's good. Second of all, we think that there's so many potential illnesses on a variety of levels and scales. I've already addressed this and I flagged it at the start of my speech. We think you never hear about, like, either depression or anxiety at the point it's not ever talked about. But we also think you get more mental health awareness at the point you get, like, diversities of experience. That was literally Chris's, like, one of his points. We also think you get more knowledge at the point more people are coming out with their things. Then they try to tell us that the healthcare system would be overflowed. First of all, four things. We just reject this on this premise. Second of all, we told you that, like, it's good if people go get treatment if they actually need it, and we think they deserve to do this. Third of all, we think that the whole idea of societal awareness, focus, and talk has actually increased the amount of political capital, increased the idea that people will vote towards things like mental health reform, actually want their taxes going towards it because more people know about it, more people are actually campaigning for it. We think mental health and, like, the institutions get a lot better. That's why they had that exponential increase at the point more people are actually concerned with mental health. They don't see it as some fantasy thing. That people are actually concerned about it. We actually get the healthcare system to do better at the point more people care about it. We also think that, like, yeah, we just fully reject that. We think, additionally, you won't end up in the therapist's until you actually do things like Google. But even if you do end up at the therapist's office, it's not that bad of a thing. You just talk to the therapist. Maybe you self-reflect. See if you have other, like, issues you need to deal with. I don't really see any problems here. Now, onto misinformation. Why do we get more legitimacy? A couple things. First of all, we think mental health now is seen as something real, something that real people go through. We think this is like a multitude of things, like Jazzy Thornton, for example, who is now a beacon of hope, who was once suicidal and explains her silent suffering. A lot of people will be like, you are literally white, you're quite wealthy or something, why are you depressed? We think actually it gives an insight to a lot of people's lives, whether you are poor, whether you're a minority, whether you're white, whether you're privileged. We think now you get more legitimacy as real people who've gone through this can actually talk about it with their platform. We also think that their only concern on legitimacy was no referencing. Like, here's a couple responses. First of all, we think TikToks largely have links. Second of all, like, sites. Second of all, third of all, comment sections. Fourth of all, other videos that can, like, counter your own video. Fifth of all, like, policy of fact checking, because largely these, like, TikTok is actually, like, regardless of whether or not they're incentivized, they actually have to not allow information as part of their policy. But even if TikTok wanted to, like, maximize profits, we think it's still profit incentivizing for them to not allow this at the point they lose long-term trust. We think people see and want to, like, be part of this. We don't see any problem with referencing. We think we get more legitimacy. Then they told us that mental health we've seen as a lot less serious. First of all, we told you down the line that you get better information at the point you get less misinformation. We also think you get like psychiatrists duetting your TikTok. We also think it's better than the comparative because at the point only a few people know about mental health. You have like a couple news sites having a monopoly over this information, and so suddenly they can only depict depression as like one thing. We think nuanced experiences are really good. We also think we get more accurate and useful, helpful videos. At the point, good videos that are actually helpful get more attention, more shares, and eventually like people trust them more in the long term, i.e. Jazzy Thornton with her like millions of followers. We also think it's easier to empathize with these people at the point you know more about it, as we've told you on the line, they didn't address this at all. We also think that yeah, it's just really good. Now, finally, onto treatment. At the end of that point, we think we get more awareness, and we think that we get actually effectually awareness of the people that are most vulnerable. Now, on treatment, we think that our worst case, as someone that does currently struggle with a couple things, maybe do more research, and then find out they don't have a certain mental illness, but are still in that process, they still get more information. But our best case is someone that literally is suffering, having not to silently suffer or think they're literally crazy, but actually attempt to go on to get treatment. They told us that doctors might delegitimize them by being like, by people saying, I saw a video on TikTok. We actually think we get people to the doctor's door in the first place. But we also think that we get progress within the health lines because, first of all, like, you have the Hippocratic Oath, but also they got the causation part wrong. We think the only progress of research we have is due to the normalization, due to the public awareness, due to the things we have voting, funding, policy. We think it's really, really important to these people. We also think that the unique part of TikTok is in the absence. You'd have these conservative adults on Facebook never engaging with this, no information, nothing. And the continuation of struggling and suffering. We empower, we have normalized it, we've had TikTok so the youth are empowered, they aren't told to be quiet, aren't told that they're dumb. We don't get these youth to struggle anymore because they're in these online communities, they have awareness, they know what they're doing, and now these like right-wingers won't be able to tell them to shut up at the point they're on TikTok with the other liberals and learning more about this. We think we actually help these people.
Also, I think this really goes back to this aspect of the station and
Everything in this debate has to be judged by what the alternative was. And we think that for all of the flaws that TikTok does have, the alternative was no awareness. The alternative was people continuing to languish in suffering. We don't stand for that. 3 issues in this debate. First, on what the counterfactual is. Second, on what this awareness looks like. Finally, how this has affected individuals in society. First, on the counterfactual. We note here that it's extremely unclear what proposition thought the counterfactual was for the majority of their bench. They thought it was partially in real-life discussions, as they gave us at first and second, but also things like other platforms like Facebook down the line, especially at third. They give also examples of globalization showing that mental health has become more aware, has become increasingly in the public sphere, such as through news, and that this is somehow sufficient in the counterfactual. Okay. 2 responses that we had through our speeches. The first was to say that there are no reason why things like other platforms would have arisen as we gave you at Virginia. The second was to say that there's a less engagement with things like the news that we told you at Sarah. What this inherently means is that even if there is some other engagement or an awareness of mental health, that engagement is not going to young people. This is important because note that it means that everything that is compared against in this debate is compared against a world where young people have less awareness of mental health, have less capacity to access this. We gave you reasons on why this is the case, such as that there are simply no incentives for a TikTok creator to move to another platform, but I think this is most succinct in an argument that proposition gives us themselves, and that is that young people are on TikTok, meaning if they weren't on TikTok, they're not likely to be on anything else, meaning that the counterfactual would have been these people never sharing their experiences on any platform, these experiences never being given out to the public. That is bad because of the fact that it means that people were never going to learn about these issues, they were never going to seek treatment and help that I'm going to tell you about next. It means they can't win this debate because they don't have a clear conception of what the alternative world actually was. Okay, second issue then on what this awareness looks like. At first, I gave you reasons why this is likely to be things like posted by people who have gone through these experiences and not likely to be bad because of mechanisms such as the fact that there are people who duet these to call you out. There's increasing awareness by people calling you out in the comments, and also literally that these accurate depictions get more views and follows, right? They never engage with this. They just assert the fact that, yeah, there's going to be bad posts. Okay, even if that's true, it doesn't engage with what we told you about the most popular posts being the most accurate ones, the most popular posts being the ones that are most likely to be accurate. What else did they tell us? They also told us it's extremely bad because it's people craving for an answer. Listen, if you are suffering and you crave an answer and you find something that might look like one on TikTok and you go get treatment, we think that's incredibly good. We think that it means that people actually recognize that things aren't just the way it is, because they never contend with this either, right? They say that people should just go and get diagnoses, but I gave you in my first speech why some people may believe that things are just the way it is, that they are just stupid and that's why they perform badly, not because they have ADHD, that they just are sad, and they're doomed to be sad, not that they have depression. These are the things that you get when people share their experiences, their personal experiences. Finally, on how this has affected individuals and treatment and society. Broken down this into two parts. The first is individual treatment. What do we hear from the proposition? We heard that two things. The first is that people might get diagnoses when they don't need them. Okay, the problem with this is that it's extremely condescending to say that anyone who seeks treatment because they saw something on TikTok that means that now they realize they might have a problem is just lying about it and faking about it, or does not realize and exploit it. I mean, that is just like when they say that it's taking resources from people who actually need help, they neglect the fact that maybe these people needed help, right? Why are we saying that they don't deserve to get this help? The second is they say they self-diagnose and self-treat. Our responses were, listen, if you self-treat and now you feel better, you probably didn't have these conditions in the first instance. That's fine then, symmetric. But if they didn't self-treat, but if they self-treated and it didn't work, that's when they receive actual treatment. That's good anyway. It ends up being with more people with treatment. We also have this material on normalization. We gave you down the line that it normalizes these things at the point where everyone shares their experiences. We have a spectrum of experiences when young people all across TikTok talk about different things. This is good for the mental health of those individuals and those groups, but also individuals seeking treatment. They never contend with this. They can't win this debate. Proud to oppose.
Also, I think the speaker for their speech, and I'll let him up back for reply.
Team Hawke's Bay has proved to you that TikTok is inaccurate, exploitive, and polarizing. And the Negating team simply stands for awareness without any consideration for the massive harms that TikTok mental health awareness has created. Three major points in this debate that I've identified are how vulnerable people act on TikTok, the awareness of mental health issues, and the accuracy of this awareness and what is done with the information. Firstly, I'd like to talk about the main stakeholders in this debate, which are vulnerable people. And we told you from first that vulnerable people are misled on TikTok. The Negating team claimed that people on TikTok are sensible enough to understand when TikToks are spreading lies, or don't relate to you. We told you that the majority of people on TikTok are the youths. They are young people. They don't have the contextual knowledge required to make these decisions, to understand when they are being lied to understand when they are being manipulated or exploited. So what we see under the status quo is vulnerable people, whether it being people who need help or whether it being young people who are easily convinced that they do, being given misinformation. And the idea that you don't stop at one TikTok just proves this more. Young people go down this rabbit hole, convincing themselves that they need help, and we told you that in most cases there are other solutions that these people can go down, and what they are actually doing instead is filling up healthcare gaps that are already limited, that need to be saved for people like helplines, that for people who are genuinely about to kill themselves. Second point of clash is the idea of awareness. Now, both sides agree that awareness is important. Now, I just need to prove to you that we are the side that gets more productive awareness. Under the status quo, with TikTok, we get diluted awareness that only reflects simple, everyday traits that literally anyone could have. We told you from first this looks like people fidgeting in class when really anyone could have that. We told you at first when it's periods of tiredness as depression. We told you this can be manipulated to spread misinformation. Now, the other team tried to mitigate this by saying that psychiatrist duetting was going to be fact-checking and this was going to be substantive enough. We told you so many people on TikTok are literally lying about the qualifications they have to be getting engagement. This point does not stand. We told you on our side of the house we still get awareness. We've told you about social changes over the last 20 years. That means talk of that many social issues has increased. This looks like more global news. It looks like spread on other social medias that allow platforms for real discussion. It looks like real qualified doctors talking about it on news outlets and other forms of media. Mental health wasn't just created and perpetrated on TikTok. There is awareness in other areas. We see productive discussion. And we also told you that the idea of normalization is just the idea on a normalization that's promoted on TikTok is just trends, and we do not think mental health should be considered as another trend. Lastly, the point on accuracy. They told you that people can see outliers clearly, and this is going to mean consistency is important. We told you the information that is consistent on TikTok is not real depictions of what mental health is, and it's not giving people the knowledge they actually need to make decisions about their mental state. They tried to claim that simplistic ideas create complex ideas, and we agree. Simplistic ideas being put into people's heads makes them spiral. It's creating other issues that need to be addressed. They also claimed that popular posts become the most accurate. We told you from first this is not true. Popular posts are the ones that get the most engagement, the ones that go out to more people, and these are the ones that have very basic surface level ideas. We're going to get people to seek professional help and less self-diagnosing. We get people for seeking help for behaviour outside of the TikTok world. We also talked about how Isabella's split went pretty much unresponded to about how it actually perpetrates stereotypes. We get awareness, we mitigate these harms. Vote for.
Debate. I invite you to cross the floor, shake hands, and then everyone can leave for the judge.
Thank you. Great.